Oh, there we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the September 22nd Roach Wiggle 2022, etc. It's this is going to be a short one. I'm saying that up front. Good to see everybody. Tennyson, hello. It's always nice to see you outside the email correspondences. Martin, excellent to see you again too. You were the last two streams. You've been at the beginning of the streams, which is great. Jojo, good to see you too. Alan, wonderful. Yeah, so short stream. Basically, I'm in the middle of a billion different things right now. I have been down to just me. Take a sip here. Christian is currently going to school and can only come over and help certain days of the week. So he's going to be over tomorrow. I have a bunch of things scheduled for tomorrow. I have to go take the goats back. My neighbor's goats have they've done their job of clearing out the brush. Now I got to go in and cut and dab all the invasive shrubs and stuff in his yard to get parts of it ready for native wildflowers and possibly doing an herbicide spray starting next year back there. We aren't 100% sure on some of that. Let's see what else. So goats have to be, holy crap, I have to do that tomorrow morning. The goats are going to the person who actually produced Victor, to Darren Flagg of White Rose Farm. And so I got to wrangle the goats, which is a pain in the first place, get them into their carrier, take them out to Darren's place tomorrow, say hello to some of the dogs, take off, get back here, do bug stuff. I've got like 12 species of mantids I have to put away tonight, and hopefully it won't push over into tomorrow either. Saturday is going to be an actual day for me to breathe and go do some fun, surprisingly non-related bug stuff with some people. And then Sunday, hit the ground running again because what do I have to do Sunday? I have to go pick up some Damon diadema from a friend, so I have to drive halfway across the state for that. Then have to go see another friend about some more bugs. Then have to go see another friend to drop off the goat carrier. Was I picking something up? And he has some pigeons for me, so I have to leave the goat carrier, pick up pigeons, and then get back home and work on stuff. Monday, thank you for accidentally plugging the auction there, Alan. Monday, I will be posting the schedule for the auction / giveaway / whatever else it's going to be. So that will be posted hopefully on the homepage. I will likely also put up, I set up these live streams ahead of time sometimes when I remember. So I will likely on Monday set up the live stream for those 2 days. And in the description will be rules and the time slots, rough time slots for things, etc. It's going to be insane, I am certain. And anybody who's here, if there's low attendance, you are going to see a lot of good bugs for very good prices, and you will receive some very nice giveaways as well. If there's a lot of people here, I can imagine things might get pretty fierce over some of the things that are going up. So it's going to be crazy. And in between all of this, I have orders going out next week, Tuesday, the business as usual elsewhere. And I'm currently in the middle of, I finally got things in here pretty much where I want them. I have a bunch of shelf space. Everything's been cleaned. I went and did this, I think, yesterday. Relatively organized, and some fruit fly cultures I put on there to jumpstart because all the mantid mouths I have to feed now. And so, but in general, there's a couple things missing, but those will be filled in over time. They're just things I bumped into bigger containers downstairs. So this is all good. I feel very comfortable with the state of the office, how it is currently. It's the rest of the house, which if you hear any noises coming from outside the room, it's either Victor or my dad. My dad's over and being an absolute saint and helping me tidy up the house and get on top of some of those things while I've been working myself to death doing bug things. So let's see, anything to think about? I think, was it last time I mentioned, I don't know what happened to my Chirinus Acosta, or Acosta, I think it is. So I flooded the enclosure to hopefully get it to come up onto some of the decor pieces or whatnot. And I finally got a chance to go in and poke around and see if it actually went all the way up to the top of things. And so I finally went in and looked around. It was nothing to be found. You couldn't even find a dead body. And then I noticed that I was using frost cloth for a lot of things, and frost cloth is fine, but it's not. The main reason I switched from frost cloth to muslin is because with some of these models of faunariums and critter keepers, when you clamp down the tops onto the body of the container, it pinches the fabric, and the frost cloth, you can do that a handful of times before it eventually gives out, and then you've got a hole in the frost cloth. And even if it's in a corner, it's not sightly and it's not effective, or not as effective. So I've been switching everything over to muslin because I don't have that problem using the muslin even on the tighter clamping lids for things. But I had not yet went over to the general arachnid, etc. rack, and had not yet changed those lids. And so it was still the frost cloth. And it seemed like something had tried to shred through it, not from the inside, but maybe from the outside, which is very weird. I can't imagine what could have done that. But regardless, so there was some hole in the frost cloth. And so the Chirinus probably over the trip crawled out and went off. So I'm upset about that. In contact with somebody who might have some more available. Muslin bags. I just get it I get like a huge roll of it. I go into Joann Fabrics and get a huge roll of it, or online if Joann Fabrics doesn't have it, depending on the pricing. And so, so I've been using that. It works great. No complaints there. I'm very happy with how everything is with all of this stuff in terms of ease of care and duration of time between having to care for it with these setups. But yeah, so another thing with the arachnid rack was because it was very low priority for me. A lot of those things are things that's just more general interest that I kind of like. I didn't yet convert them to the front watering setups for some of these faunariums and critter keepers, and so I had to go through and basically redo all of them. The daemon are doing great. I lost one pair of Phrynis or Phrynis white eye, and haven't lost a single daemon in a long time. I think I lost a couple when they were like second instar, like maybe like 3 out of like 50. But all of them are doing fine. And I have an adult pair that I need to pair up, actually. I've been waiting for the male to recover a whip before I put them together. And it's been, like 3 to 5 months since he molted last. So I might just go ahead and do it. I'll talk to my friend who breeds them and see what her opinion is when I see her on Sunday. And so other things. I see a request from Damian Emelianov, who I don't think I've seen you here before. So if you're new, welcome. Asking for a pie dish beetle setup. I will have to show it off maybe next week or at the next point that I actually have time to go downstairs and pull it out. There's somebody else who wants to see a bunch of Darklings, and I've been texting him for a while. We're supposed to do a trade and stuff like this. But the Darkling beetles are all mostly in faunariums, and they're on the top shelf of the beetle rack, and it's kind of a pain for me to take them down because of how heavy it is, and I have to be careful not. I don't have to be too careful not to like break the plastic or anything like it. It's just a big inconvenience, and I'd rather do it all at once. But I have an enclosure in here that is basically a pie dish beetle setup we probably work for Miracatum or for Contusum. And so I will show that off now, basically what it is. So this is a mixture of a Aranavega locality and some Alan. I keep forgetting what family of millipedes they are. There's some weird family of millipedes from the desert in Arizona. And so this is the enclosure. I just threw them in here together because I found them together in the wild. So I figured why not save a container. Well, this is basically, if you were to design this enclosure and instead of the shredded, woody, pulpy material here, and instead filled it all the way up to here with this like 70-80% sand, 20-30% coconut fiber mixture, this would basically be my Ambaphion enclosure, and then just, like a piece of bark in there for the adults to crawl around on and whatnot, watering port at the front. So that this is basically the setup. But with Ambaphion, again, I go over this, I don't know how many times. I feel like a broken record, but I'm just going to keep doing it anyways, saying it. With high ventilation, you can keep high ventilation and dry air. You can keep the substrate very moist. If you have very humid air and not a lot of ventilation, you're not going to have a good time. So a lot of people who are out west where the household air is just dry constantly year round, you can get away with a lot less ventilation. Here in the Midwest, humidity in here is 46% now. We actually did get some rain a couple days ago. The humidity went up to like high 60s. I don't think it quite hit the 70s. I keep looking at the digital hygrometer. So, and then of course, there's going to be a day where the humidity here is going to drop through the floor, and that's going to be when I turn the furnace on, which, yesterday we basically went from 80s and it felt like summer. And I was just like, oh, wow, this is a nice, not so fall day. And then today, the first day of autumn, it was just like I woke up and I walked in the bedroom. There's not a good crosswinds because there's my neighbor's garage, and then there's the bedroom, and it has the one window, and I have the sunlight blinding shades, whatever, and Victor's in there with me. So I don't always feel how cold it is outside because there's not a lot of good airflow in my bedroom. But then when I woke up, I opened the door and I walked into the hallway, and I have all the doors or all the windows open in the house. It's just like, it's cold. Like it was I think the house temperature was like 64 or something. So it dropped. Victor and I went for a walk at like 11 or midnight last night, and it was still very comfortably warm. So over the course of maybe like 8 hours, the temperature dropped like 20-ish degrees. Pretty crazy. So the only two whip species. So the whips that I have, Alan, wherever that little species is that you sent me from, that you gave me in the spring. You gave me a bunch of little babies of it. I can't remember if it was a Phrynis or Paraphrynus. It just don't work with it enough to remember. Phrynis margin maculatus, Damon diadema. That wasn't working with the Trinus. I mean, it's possible it somehow crawled into another enclosure and is going to set up shop there, but I don't have high hopes for that. Phrynis white eye, Paraphrynis white eye, Phrynis white eye, Paraphrynis cubensis from Key Largo are doing well. I did move them into a larger enclosure because a lot of people asked me about them. I want to get the production up, and the fulvous wood roaches were Parcoblata fulvescens were kind of getting a little out of control in there, so I wanted to sort of cut in their numbers. And I may offer them more Paraplecta than Parcoblata into the future. A lot of whips really like Paraplecta, I'm finding, because I've raised the Damon diadema from pretty much second instar, third instar. For the first couple instars, I was feeding them Drosophila, especially high dye. And then once they hit about fourth instar, I've been giving them Paraplecta, and they seem very, very, very content to eat nothing but Paraplecta, basically. So I'm wondering if it just excellent all around for all different kinds of whips. So let's see. I cracked open some things on my shelf of stuff that I sort of set up in not final setups. Like if I ran out of containers, it was like, okay, I really need to just get this set up and set it aside so that it can try to culture or something like that. So there are these little harvestmen from Tennessee that I was sent. last winter. And some of those weird little ones eat like snails and stuff like that. And so I was ambitious. And since Will was around, I was feeling brazen and know-it-all-y. And so I set them up in this very, very large for their size. I mean, the body length is only like 3-4 millimeters or something like that. A very large enclosure with dwarf purple isopods and tropical pink springtails and what are they? Glass snails. I don't know the Latin yet. It's a common pest snail in enclosures. And then also I have Subulina octona, which is another kind of pesty snail from Florida. And so I just put them in this enclosure, a bunch of organic matter, threw them in with all these things. And I just checked on them today for the first time in maybe like 2 or 3 months. And there's a thriving ecosystem in this container feeding on just like the rotting leaves and stuff. But the harvestmen, they're all still alive. They just haven't done anything. Like, I feel like they maybe got a little bit bigger. Maybe they molted once, but like they're not reproducing. I don't see any offspring. And so I'm wondering if I should cool them or something. Because like, if they weren't eating things, if they weren't finding food, they would have died by now. Because I think we set those up in like December and November of last year, and they're still alive and they look very healthy, but just they haven't done anything. Like, I'm used to like larger cosmetids like Venoni sei, just like having huge gushes of babies at times, and yet these other ones just won't do anything. So Jojo says, I've got some Phrynis margin maculatus, put some videos up, love them the most. Now I got some E. bacillifer and P. white. I realize whips are super amazing. Yeah, I do like them. I was really hoping to get those Phrynis going so I could have a nice little colony of them like the Paraphrynis cubensis are doing, but now I have to find another one. But I mean, honestly, I've really been liking the Daemon. Since they're so long-lived and they're communal up until they're basically like subadult-ish, it's been very easy for me to just kind of provide them with everything they need. And then obviously when they get large enough, work on pairing up adults and producing more of them. Yeah, and maybe I will eventually work with more species. Alan is the one whose door you should bust down if you want cool whips, because Alan works with a lot more than I do. So, Nikki asks, how big of a tub tank do you keep the fulvescens in? Any issues with density? My main culture of Parkablata fulvescens is a 5.5 gallon tank, and have learned throughout the years, both from keeping the fulvescens and also from seeing sort of some of the habitats that they will exist in, that they are probably if not the most, I haven't seen deserti enough in the wild. I have kind of a general idea. I mean, it has Parkablata deserti has desert in the name, but fulvescens is a good candidate for another extremely dry tolerant Parkablata. Like, you will find them in the scrub habitats, sand ridge scrub habitats in Central Florida, and deserti you will find in the desert or on sand dunes in odd places like that. And so fulvescens will take it very hot and dry. I'm actually surprised they range as far north as they do. They must just be very adaptable. I think they might be the southernmost ranging Parkablata, maybe. So, and I haven't had any issues with them hitting like ridiculously high densities either. I don't think a lot of Parkablata really, they don't seem to mind being kept at very high densities. Speaking of which, Alan, you sent me Parkablata caudali from Torreya like 2020, late 2021. You sent me that group of caudali from Torreya, and they've been, must have been early 2021. because I set them up after I got them. I set them up in here, and I think that's when this was all sort of taking form, was in 2021. And so these Parcoblatacaudali have not matured since you sent them. And there was a time, I think it was even over this winter, where a lot of them just looked like terrible, like absolutely horrible, terrible, like tarsi missing and all this other stuff, and like nubs of antennae. And I think that was from the dryness, even though I was watering them frequently. But they were all like subadults. I was like, okay, I'm going to lose these. And then come this spring, they all did stationary malts. So they none of them matured. They just all like rejuvenated, and so all of them are happy and healthy looking now. And so I'm finally fed up with them, and I'm throwing the whole culture into the cold room for like 3 months, and I'm going to keep them like dark and see if I can force them to mature, because this is ridiculous. And so I haven't had this problem with Notha, and Alan, you and I think that Caudali and Notha might be very closely related. So, and Notha are currently, I keep them in with my Elliptorhina chopardi, and they were doing exceptionally well with them. And then I decided to upgrade, because nobody seems to have Elliptorhina chopardi. Nobody really seemed to keep dwarf hissers. Actually, I feel like a lot of hissers that aren't hybrids have kind of just disappeared from the US. And so I kind of figured, with those being a candidate for one that I should have more of, because I do like them. And they were very popular when I got into roaches. But anyways, I just decided, hey, I'm going to bump them up to a 10-gallon because I can. And so I threw the Noth in with them, and I'm not 100% sure how they're going to do I mean, they were doing excellent beforehand. Like, I had hundreds of new Notha after they were also nymphs for like 2 years. Geez, I remember when you sent them to me, and I think I threw adults or subadults that you sent in with my old African giant millipede bin, and I left them in there. And then at some point they produced babies, and then I went through and I harvested all the babies and pulled them to their own setups. Yeah, so they live with my Elliptorhina chopardi. Brett says the only dwarf I'm missing now, only other person doing well with chopardi. Oh, I mean, David, I have tons of. Yeah, well, that's good, but like there's that is wonderful, Brett. But there's also like the cultural, the sort of cultural zeitgeist of whether or not a species is available. So some things that are readily available, obviously, like dubias. And actually, this is kind of difficult to think about. A lot of the Gyna, kind of like Lyrida, and Cafrorum is another one where it just seems like a lot of people have them. A lot of people who just have general collections of invertebrates also have them. But there's some things were just a lot more common. Like, it seemed like a lot more people had colonies of them. What's a good example? The Bursatria. Like, I don't know anybody else who has cultures of Bursatria anymore. And my pallid form ones, I have almost lost a couple of times now. I've put them into their own big, huge, extensive setup, and actually split them into 2 groups because I was having an issue. I have always had an issue with Bursatria and the Serratia infections. I think I'm learning more and more. I think it's related to humidity. And so, and not just that, but also just general condition of the roaches. Like, if they run out of food and are forced to eat coconut fiber and stuff like that, it seems like that might affect how they can put up with different things. So, but yeah, the red and orange roaches are used. For anybody who's wondered about this, are not actually genetic most of the time. So you have some things like the amber dubias that are genetic, and of course John Frost was selecting out of adults, which is a smart move in this situation. He was selecting based on the adult color, not the nymphs. And so, but people people's colonies will have red or orangish nymphs pop up, and they'll think that it's genetic when actually it's a Serratia infection. And it can be, again, I think it's humidity related. If things are too dry, or if there's a sort of a perfect storm of subpar conditions, you can get outbreaks of it. And I still, again, with my Bursatria, I still have that issue in all my Bursatria enclosures. And some roaches, it'll just pop up and go away, like Eublabrus gestenti, the ivories. I've seen it if I'm not, maybe it is food related or something, but if I'm not taking good scheduled care of them, it'll pop up, and then if I do, it'll go away quite quickly. And then some other things like the Bursatria, it'll just persist for a long time, even if I'm keeping on top of things. So Jojo says, I have a side quest to find Parkablata that exists in Canada and USA. You shouldn't be too difficult to do, since Americana was found in Idaho. I wouldn't be surprised, or at least what currently classified as Americana is found in Idaho. So you may find them further north, out west as well, up into British Columbia over there. So, yeah, let's see, what else was I talking about. We've gotten a Parkablata discussion. Good thing Kai's not here, otherwise he'd be belittling and berating me for discussing Parkablata. Let's see, anything else. Lata and Divisum may be available for sale pretty soon. Finally, the fruits of the spring trip down south will be available. And unfortunately, I lost my Buell Parkablata zebra colony to entomophagus fungus, it would seem, as well as I lost a whole locale of Lata that we collected to entomophagus fungus. The Foster's Loop Road completely lost them. And the Lata colony from Tuskegee National Forest has some Virginica mixed in. It might even have some Divisa. They weren't very common there. I think they like it a little drier. But so I gotta regroup and get a couple of these Parkablata that I am missing. Maybe that'll be next summer's thing. I don't know how feverishly I'm going to pursue it. I do have Oleriana from Tennessee here, from the Tennessee trip. I found one female at the rest station, and so she produced some babies. I have some Virginica from here in Michigan, in Dearborn. The Virginica here actually look a bit different than the southern ones. They seem to be darker, more of a darker orange color, different wing color as well. So, but they did really good. Actually, the Oleriana, she died maybe a month and a half or less than that after I collected her. Yes, you did give me Bibb County Oleriana. I was just looking around seeing what's in here. And you also gave me a northern strain of Parkablata Americana. So, Pennsylvanica from Alabama is doing fine. That's been doing fine for years now, actually. So, but I'm happy to finally have a good group of Lata to work with, and now we'll see if they need diapause or these other obnoxious things that I had to deal with Parkablata. Let's see. We're getting close to the half an hour mark, so I might wrap it up pretty soon. My exciting Parkablata talk. I mean, it is exciting. Like, we know very little about. Like, I don't even know how Parkablata caudali continues to, or Notha continue to exist in the wild. Their population densities are just so low. They don't seem to have any like physiological defenses against predators other than just hiding. Like, it's just living on the edge constantly. It seems really, really like stupid, kind of. Like, you have a population density for like Parkablata Notha of like, I would say maybe no more than 50 individuals per square mile, I guess. Yes, it is kind of cool when you put it that way, that they have such low densities in the wild. It's just so weird. Tree cavities. But there's all kinds of other stuff that lives on the trees, like at the Riverwalk, Alan. There's the Dolomedes, and can't really think of anything else off the top of my head that would just be going for all kinds of different spiders and stuff like that. Bastards are a pain in the ass to catch when I try to catch them. Yeah, it's just the tree cavities seem to be the thing that caudali does, and Notha lives under bark and just in a random place. It's very difficult because being at low densities like that and being kind of found in a mix of places, it makes it very difficult to sort of pinpoint what exactly their like gimmick is to existing. Like, it's how do I explain that better? How do I explain that better? A sort of gimmick. It's like if they're not naturally abundant, you can't really say, okay, I found one of them on a piece of live tree bark or something, and then I found like 20 of them inside of a little tree cavity or something like that. So they must hit something with the tree cavities, the wood, or the microclimate or something. But it just seems like both of them are just found like, oh, here's one here. Oh, here's one here. These just kind of sort of randomly distributed. So trilobites, sometimes low density species are surprisingly durable sometimes. Yeah, I mean, it could be living at low densities could be a behavioral response or just a population level dynamic response to heavy parasitoid pressure or something like that. So Tennyson, my Portentosum mussola currently have one horizontal piece of bark. I don't think it really matters for hissers. I think I'm going to go on iNaturalist. I think there's some pictures of them just being found in all kinds of just different bark and woody situations in the wild, which is very funny, actually, because they just, you would think from some of the places that they're found that they they would need to eat wood, or they're very picky about their diet or something like that, and yet you can bring them into captivity and they just, okay, here's a picture. Somebody's claiming to be Gronphodurina grandadiri, but it's pretty clearly an immature individual. So how could you even oh, TJ, if you're here, I just slighted you because I just saw that you suggested that this individual is a grandadiri, but I would say, how could you tell? Because it's immature. You can tell the last abdominal segments don't look like a mature male. Anyways, so but my advisor in college went to Madagascar and sent me a picture of a Elliptorhina that they found, Elliptorhina javanica, and it was under horizontal bark. It was just like a bark tree laying horizontally, in the forest somewhere. It looked. It was the time of year where everything looked very, very lush and trees looked very deciduous-y and whatnot. And so it was just under bark, same kind of bark you could probably find anywhere in a deciduous forest. So, well, that's an interesting. Yes, sir. Well, that's an interesting. Yes, sir. That looks like a black phase of something we don't have in culture. Interesting. Sorry, I just got caught up looking at some iNet records. Hello, Amanda. Sorry, I haven't texted you yet. Topic option. What do you think the next popular bug will be? Like how isopods and mantis took off. That is a good question to ask. I will answer it briefly as I'm going to wrap up the live stream. I see that you may have just joined us, but I'm very busy today and was going to do a shorter live stream. But it really could go with anything. I feel like isopods were very accessible to a lot of people. Mantids, I still don't know how mantids are as popular as they are, because there's so many of them. To continue propagating them, you need more ideal conditions than are offered. But I understand the appeal of mantids, and I think actually part of it is People think they're very smart insects. I don't know who I told this to. There's a person who bought a Heteracheta orientalis, and she's a very pleasant individual. She's kept that Heteracheta alive a long time. I know it's a long-lived mantid, but that thing's quite old now and probably is going to continue living. But she had asked me about that and, how mantids look at you and all these other things. And I went into a little rant about how mantids are basically dumb as rocks and probably one of the closest things that nature has ever created to like the perfect literal killing machine, because big eyes, there's like no, other than the eyeballs, there's like no cephalization going on there. They are just, there's like not very complex social behaviors, etc. So as far as insects go, they're very, very stupid. That's, obviously that's not, I'm not trying to, there's a quick write-off of, oh, it looked at me. Oh, my mantid knows me. No, it has absolutely no idea. It sees movement. It's judging if you're going to eat it or if it's going to eat you. And so, but again, I feel like what we should appreciate them for. They are killing machines and they are very effective at it. And I wonder if you were to, this has probably been done, but if you were to look at the success rate of the hunts of praying mantids, how it would compare to other things that we consider to be killing machines like big cats and sharks, I would imagine that mantids have a very, very high success rate for their hunting strategy. So the next big bug, millipedes seem to be getting some traction. Millipedes suffer sort of the isopod fate of the nice, cool, pretty, fancy ones a lot of people want can be kind of picky or not. You have to have a better understanding of decomposition and whatnot to culture some of those other millipedes. Case in point is why gigas are not regularly available. And so roaches haven't really had their day yet, surprisingly. I find that it's kind of a shame considering every year we seem to get another 10 to 20 really amazing species. Like here we are in 2022, and I have Bantua robusta and Pseudoglomerus magnifica and all these different Aranavega, Eutherhapa. So there's a surprising, I mean, I guess maybe not to other roach people, there's, you can't really go to any one place and find a selection of isopods readily in stock versus with roaches. You guys have me, and there are a couple of other folks who have pretty impressive lists of roaches available too. There's just a lot of options for people with roaches, and I think over time, when people figure out how, or when people listen to people such as myself saying that isopods in general do better when kept with roaches, asterisk, that there will be a much larger push to get roaches and have the isopods as their little companion bugs. So, so something about them being brain dead before. Well, we have. There is research now on roaches being capable of being classically conditioned, and I linked to it in a blog post a while ago. Here, I'll link to this here. Cockroaches show individuality in learning and memory during classical and operant conditioning. So let me see which one is Periplaneta americana. You know what? If I were to point to a bug that's probably a genius bug, it would probably be Periplaneta americana. You have kind of the perfect storm for Periplaneta americana to be a very intelligent animal. You have the fact that they are generalists. They tend to inhabit complex environments that have routines and schedules, people's houses or apartment complexes, etc. They are relatively long-lived. They can easily live over a year, and usually smart things, with the exception being cephalopods, tend to be very long-lived because there's no point in learning things about, social contexts in your environment and blah, 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 or something as simple as light goes off, I go out and look for food type things. There's no reason in learning those things if you're only going to be alive for 6 months or something short like that. So things that are long-lived tend to be smarter, things like elephants, or things that need to pass on cultural knowledge, things like humans, elephants, different great apes, monkeys, birds, things like corvids, etc. So mantids, which can make it to a year. There's some species that will live over a year. Don't really. There's not really much knowledge that needs to be gained. There's a lot of very hardwired instinct there. But when you're a Paraplanian Americana and you need to navigate complex environments, or you need to have sort of a ability to detect social cues in the sense that, oh, there's pheromones laid over here, I need to go over there. Stronger pheromones here, less stronger pheromones over there. Light goes off, there's not going to be anything that's going to scare me. Light goes off, oh, I know that these garbage smell is going to happen pretty soon. I can go forage on that. I'm not saying these are very. I'm really giving roaches more credit than I feel they deserve with what I'm saying, but I'm trying to illustrate the point that it's different than having instinctual knowledge that you need to climb to the top of whatever's tall around you and you need to grab whatever moves and eat it, or you need to fly or drop if there's something that is big enough to eat you. So how do you personally go about gigas breeding / getting eggs? Is an environmental trigger thing people write about necessary? I haven't found that to be the case. I think that maybe wild-caught gigas are generally in poor condition. And I have also found that baby gigas, and I'm working on this to see, is this a husbandry thing that I've overlooked some detail that I wasn't overlooking before? But baby gigas are very cannibalistic, it would seem, or whoever gets to be bigger than the others the fastest seems to snack on everybody else. But I have not found there to be any sort of seasonality to it or anything like that. So immediately reminded of rats after having my first roaches from you. Yeah, so I mean, all these, a lot of things that deal with and live around humans are a lot of them have to have some type of intelligence. Asterisk again. So things like think about coyotes that live in downtown Chicago that have to learn how to navigate streets and not be noticed and have very tight schedules and things like that. Rats need to know how to navigate things and solve different small puzzles in their day-to-day life. So there's good reason that roaches would have that sort of intelligence given the other list of factors. Paraplaneta americana is probably the biggest. What is that in my ceiling? Oh, it's a spot. It's always been there. Oh no, that's something on the screen. So Paraplaneta americana, it's like, I think that's the biggest insect that is regularly found in association with humans. I can't think of anything else. The closest invertebrate that has sort of a cosmopolitan distribution with humans would probably be the Scutigura coleoptrata house centipedes. But I can't think of anything else that gets quite as large as Paraplaneta americana that is a very common commensal or associate with humans worldwide. So, but as enthralling as this conversation is, I must wrap things up and get back to putting away stuff. You've observed this cannibalism in gigas. I see no reason why I would go from seeing multiple newborn babies of gigas when there's plenty of space and resources available to having just a few larger sized ones. Oh, my dad doing something. So, but yes, and then the fact that gigas adult females are just basically constantly laying eggs too. So I'm toying around with this and trying to figure out, because I have noticed there's been a trickle of baby gigas available from Roach Crossing for a couple of months now. And I would like that to be less of a trickle, because apparently people aren't doing well with the wild-caught imports, or at least they're not getting babies, it sounds like. So I'm trying to figure out what I did so well back in the day, because there's my one main enclosure I just pulled the adults out of. I was digging through the substrate. There's an egg. There's another egg. There's another egg. There's another egg. And then why am I not getting babies hatching? And sometimes it does. It was about 6 months between when I had Gigas in the first original container back in like 2015, 2016, and when I actually started finding babies. And there were a lot of babies too. But this currently what's happening, I'm trying to figure out like what was so different about the substrate and whatever conditions that I put them into that allowed for so many babies to hatch and apparently not eat each other. So I'm working on that. I have my personal breeding group of Gigas, which are F2 captive breds, and 1 male and 3 females. My friend who I'm picking the daemon up from has also been breeding Gigas, and her F2s, which came from me, have been producing babies. And when I was there in the spring, we were pulling Gigas and moving them around, doing this and setting that up. So she's having okay results. She's getting offspring. She already has enough to replace her current adults when they pass. But I want more than that. I saw that we could get more, and I want to figure out why I got more before. And I don't think temperature cycling and all that stuff has to do with it, because I do see babies pop up and then they just sort of disappear sometimes. So I'm working on it. Hopefully I can figure it out. I will say those Spirostreptus fisheri are so like ridiculously easier than Gigas on every front. And I have a group of those. They're not adults. It'll probably be another year to 2 years before they're adults. But I'm going to breed the heck out of those Spirostreptus when they mature, because they're just so much easier all around. And I know people are always like, oh, I want Gigas. Like, oh, it's not Gigas. Oh, I wasn't sold Gigas. And it's like, yeah, you should be sold what you bought. Somebody sells Spirostreptus. Or Spiropius. Sorry. Thank you, Alan. Spiropius fisheri. If somebody sells something is a Gigas and it's another species, that's not okay, But I think people will fall in love with Spiropius over Archispirostreptus any day, because they're just easier all around. I've not had any of these weird cannibalism issues or anything with them. Again, Alan, I have to send you pictures of mine, but they seem to be all black, including the legs. And I think the person who has them has had them for quite a while. So, but wherever they are, they're in that genus, and they're one of those two entities. But they're a lot easier than Gigas are, and so those will be very popular when they take off and people realize that they're not really going to notice a difference in size between the two of them either. So, because at least my captive raised Gigas, they're still huge millipedes. They're still very impressive, but it's when you're talking like half an inch to an inch on 2 giant millipedes, it's you don't really notice it. So, anyways, all right, excellent stream, everyone. I will see you all next week, Thursday. That will be the last stream before the big auction. Again, October 1st and 2nd, 10 a.m. Eastern time to 10 p.m. Eastern time, both Saturday and Sunday. All day, I'm going to be going up and down, sort of inventorying things, getting groups together, and making a bunch of cool stuff available. It's going to be insane. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell people who are in either of those categories. And I will see you all next week at that stream. Hexa homies. I like that. So, I have to say my tagline. I always say my tagline. Maybe I forget to say the tagline last time. Until next time, may your cultures ever be bountiful. That's good. There we go. All right.